This is the Morning Tempo podcast. I'm your host, Robonzo. On this podcast, I have conversations with business owners and the entrepreneurial with the slant toward creativity. It's an opportunity for you to learn with me from people who are finding success in the business world, all intended to make your entrepreneurial journey a little bit easier. This episode is about WordPress website security, but don't let that scare you. It's relevant, I promise. But before we get there, how are you? How are things in your part of the world? I hope you and yours are well. Let me know. Send me a note. All of my contact info is at morningtempo.com, and I really would love to hear from you. Yeah, again, this episode is about WordPress website security. It's relevant to the world of small business and creative entrepreneurship because most of you have or will have a website for your business, or you should. It's based on a presentation I did to my WordPress meetup group earlier this year. Doing the presentation and this podcast episode was a way for me to learn more about WordPress website security. And for the presentation, I learned through research. In this conversation, I learned from my guest, who is Beto Rubio. He is the principal of Servidores Rápidos, a Panama-based company that does web hosting, managed WordPress web hosting, and they have DevOps plans as well. I stumbled on that because I know so little about DevOps. That's funny. It's funny to me in my head. Beto is also an operations developer and all-around IT nerd. Some of the stuff we talked about that I didn't include in this conversation just goes deep, man. I invited him on to provide some outside perspective on security topics. For you, the business owner, the creative entrepreneur, I want to make sure you're aware that there are a number of considerations that fall into the area of security, especially for business websites. This is not a scare tactic episode by any means. It's intended to give you some of the vocabulary you need as you plan your new website or plan to audit your existing website. Yes, there's some technical jargon in our conversation, but bear with me. You don't need to understand all of the technical details. You need only wrap your head around the idea that you need to be conscious of security requirements and concerns for business websites. At the end of our conversation, I'm going to tell you how you can get a website security checklist for free. You can use this checklist to have a chat with your web/IT administrator, or perhaps with the person or company you're thinking of hiring to build your next website. Okay, let's get on with the show. Here is me and Beto Rubio talking about WordPress website security. Hey, Beto, thanks for taking time out of your Friday to speak with me today about WordPress security. I appreciate it.
Thank you very much, Roberto, for inviting me. It's a pleasure.
Of course. I've been looking forward to this. Two things. I've been looking forward to talking about it for my business podcast, and I was looking forward to have a chance to get to know you just a little bit better. So that's a double bonus for me.
Yep. Likewise.
Cool. So before we started recording here, I gave you my presentation on how to secure your WordPress website, which was put together for a WordPress meetup that I started earlier this year with the help of WordPress and another meetup that you're part of in Panama City.
Yep.
And you were discussing with me, you said something like, quite frankly, a lot of this stuff on here is pretty technical. Why don't you talk about some of the day-to-day things that we as a hosting company, we would advise our clients to do, which I think is great. And I say all this just to tell people who are listening, as we talk about things that are technical, we're not going to get super deep in them, but I think they're worth mentioning because no matter whether you've ever set up a WordPress site before or you have technical expertise way beyond either Beto or myself, or you're just paying somebody to do your website for you, I think mentioning these things is good because it will give you some perspective possibly on the different types of security risks that are out there so that you can have the conversation with whomever you're hiring or working with to find out if everything you needs to be is getting done. And I'm going to help you with that if you're listening by providing a checklist, like a security checklist, so that you can have those conversations. So how does that sound, Beto?
That's actually interesting and important, because one other thing is that since security, threats and problems have become more common in an everyday news and news outlets and blogs, it is important for business owners, especially those who run a WordPress website, to be aware of those and have at least the terminology, warm in their heads. Because if you're their webmaster, or either the person that takes care of your website, or if you're doing it yourself, but let's say if you're paying for it and that this person comes to you with all of this, it might sound like they're trying to scare you to get money out of you to put all of these security things, but it's pretty real. And just by knowing the terms, you can also take advantage. Even if your website is not WordPress, you can take advantage from this information, because all websites in many ways behave the same. So, and the attacks are pretty much the same. They just vary a little bit from type of website to type of website. So yeah, just getting curious about it, investigating a little bit can save you, time and money, and especially when you have a website and it's hacked, it mostly affects the trust of your clients. So it's important to keep, our website safe of those things that can affect our reputation as a business and as a brand.
That's good points. So I guess a great place to start. We'll just kind of start going down the list here, and you reminded me one thing I want to say to people who are listening. If you're thinking about designing your site yourself for your business, I wholeheartedly encourage you to do so with WordPress. It's great.
Yes.
Now, if you're not sure, and maybe listening to this frightens you, I just want you to know that no matter what platform you're on, there can be security risks. So, but we all know about, I like to say, the Squarespaces of the world, or Wix, or if you're a musician, like Bandzoogle. And these are companies that they fully manage WordPress websites, and they're very well known. They take care of a lot of this stuff for you, but there's still some things you need to be aware of. And I know that Beto, your company does. It sounds like they probably do some managed WordPress website services. The host, one of the hosts that I've used for many years, does the same. So I guess the good point is if you're paying a consultant. Like myself, I design websites for small businesses on occasion. And if you're paying a consultant to do that, I suppose one thing that you want to look for is what are they going to do in the long term to help you maintain and keep your site safe. So, for example, you might pay me a flat fee to design it, but I'm also going to tell you that you have the option, which you're strongly encouraged to take advantage of, to have annual, like a maintenance plan, which just means the site's going to be backed up, it's going to be updated, I'm going to help you with small updates, and if any kind of weird security things happen, that's what it's for, to keep those things from happening.
Yep. And if I may interrupt for a second, I would say if you're going to hire someone who's going to build your website for you, just make sure that person is security aware, because the way the website is designed and the selection of the tools and the mechanisms that are going to be used to build your website, especially with WordPress, those can affect positively or negatively on the security side of it. So coming up with getting or selecting a consultant or a web designer that is security aware and has good practices in security matters, it will make a big difference. So this is also good, so that we create the security thingy awareness on possible clients, so you know how to select who's going to work on your website, not just on the design and the looks, but on the security part of it.
Exactly. Good point. Okay, so the thing that I did at this presentation, probably about 2 slides in, was I mentioned the top 5 WordPress security issues, and this list alone, it can be frightening for a lot of people. And in fact, I've been working with WordPress sites for a while, and this is the list that you mentioned when we talked before we were recording, Beto. It can get quite technical, and I'll confess to you, as I confess to our listeners, that many of these things I don't know that much about. So what I did was find out, well, how do I mitigate the risk of running into these things, on top of knowing that they exist, so that if I can't figure out how to mitigate it, I know what kind of things to ask when I go looking for advice. So those top 5 security issues, again, these are for some of us kind of scary, but one of them is brute force attacks. And this is, fact check me or correct me if I'm wrong on explaining any of the ones that I do try to explain, but brute force attacks are commonly done with what most of you probably know as bots that are just programs run to just automatically, nonstop look for vulnerabilities on websites, and they hammer all day, all night until they find something they can get into. So the next one is file inclusion exploits. When I wrote the presentation, I read what that meant today. It's been a few weeks. I couldn't even tell you, but we'll talk a little bit about. Do you know about this one?
Yeah, well, mostly is when someone finds a vulnerability in your website, like a little hole, and they inject a file, or let's say you get a picture from a free pictures website because it's nice and it's free and you're going to put it in your website, but then this file is contaminated as, let's say, as a the Trojan horse story. So it's contaminated, and once it's in there in your website, it's included. It's just calls home. It calls home, and then it allows the person who injected the file, either directly or indirectly, into your server to control your server or your website and to exploit the resources that you have, either take your contacts list or credit card information, or if it's just a WordPress site, they might just want to get in the server to use the hardware and all the server resources or just the connection to hide themselves and use you as a front to present themselves as you and do bad things. So basically it's just to inject a little file with little poison on it.
Oh my gosh.
And then try to control you from it. Yeah.
So let's talk about free image sites. So I very frequently use like Pexels and Pixabay, which are reputable sites as far as I know. But the more I learn, I also somewhat recently took up a freelance writing gig with Forbes.com, and so they kind of walk you through their image usage policy, and for sure 100% do not let me use any of the kind of stuff that I've been using like on my own website, which are licensed for use for commercial use. But their thing is just like, we don't even know if those guys are actually accurately looking at all that stuff. But are there some sites that are better than others, to your knowledge, that for getting free stock photography?
Well, if, like you said, if it's a reputable brand like Stock Unlimited, like Pexels, like Pixabay, those are great. But even if you get it from a reputable site and you pay for it, and I'm pretty sure we're going to talk about it later, there are a few plugins that you can put on your WordPress site that scan every file on your WordPress site, and it's never bad to just scan the file, even if it comes from a safe place. But the rule of thumb is, if it's reputable, if it's a serious website, it has all the licensing and all the information is clear, there is a big chance it's okay. If it's just looks shady, or even if it's a great picture and it's free, just don't take the risk, because pictures are one of the easiest type of files to inject malware on. And it's super easy.
And one of my early interviews on the Unstarving Musician was with a professional photographer who did the bulk of his work with music artists in the 80s. And today, so his business as he knew it has kind of died, right? If you think about it, because back then there were all these magazines, and photographers, being a photographer was kind of hard. It's very accessible now. Anyone can get into it. Magazines are dead, so the money, the money that was there wasn't there. But he spends his time now looking for people that illegally publish his photos of, say, like Van Halen or Aerosmith or something, and then he goes and sues them. So,
yeah,
not related to security, but you must be careful about the photos that you use on your website.
Yes, and I would say that's where you have to be aware that if your web consultant or web designer does it, you do need to check on the content of your website, because he might be shortcutting by doing that, for you, maybe not with a bad intention, but he might be shortcutting, but in the end, all of the legal responsibility comes to you. It's so easy to just put a picture on the Google picture search and it will find it everywhere. So you have a huge list of people you can just sue if you want to. It's actually pretty easy to commit that sin and have a picture in your website that you shouldn't.
Yep. Okay, and the next one, I'm going to mention two at once, and if you have anything that you want to share quickly, let me know, and then we'll get down the last one. So the next two are SQL injections, which we kind of sort of talked about with the file injections, and cross-site scripting.
Mm-hmm.
And then the last one is malware. So I know that with SQL injections, we start talking about getting into the database, which is actually like a vast amount of the information that is your website.
Yes.
So you don't want that messed up.
Mm-hmm.
And then tell me if I'm right on this with the cross-site scripting. This would be, I'm probably going to butcher the explanation, but this would be where maybe I'm not even going to try. I was about to go one place. I'm like, no, that's when there's a shared server hosting environment and somebody goes with a malicious script on one server and then just goes across multiple websites and servers with that. But I don't know if that's accurate. Do you know much about this problem?
It is pretty close. It is pretty close. It's actually when you start hopping, if I want to say, from one site to another because their environments are close. Like you have a shared hosting on a shared hosting company, and then yes, it's exactly what it is. So one site is, let's say, gets infected and it's some sort of a master site. But what it does is that it infects other websites and use them as a front or as a cover to do things that shouldn't happen, right?
Yeah.
I'm not going to go into it technically, but either that one and the third one, both of them, the like SQL injections and cross-site scripting, they're both pretty technical, and to go deep into them is not really worth it. What I do want to say is that there are very easy ways to mitigate them. There's very, very easy ways to cover yourself from those.
Okay, good. We'll talk about some of those. So your company does hosting servidores rápidos, which means fast servers, right? That's what you do.
Yeah.
It's funny because when we were talking that my Spanish in the technical realm, it gets weaker and weaker as I start talking about things like websites in Spanish. But when I saw servidores, I didn't realize that was servers. I was thinking services. Why is it spelled like that? And anyway, so what about virtual private servers? Is that what that stands for? Virtual private servers? Because I use a VPS setup. Are the resources with some of those such that if you're not doing all the right things to mitigate a problem like the one we just talked about, that there's a great risk of this sort of cross-site, hopping different sites and servers?
Well, you might have a virtual private server that, for those who are listening that are not too technical, the difference is like when you use a shared hosting, it's like you're renting, let's say, an apartment in a big building, right? And a VPS would be something like a small villa, but the difference is you're not sharing the hallways or elevators or anything. You just have your small villa, which is yours, and it's completely separate. That's the same in the server world. It's just a small piece of a server that is dedicated to yourself and acts as a server itself, individual server itself. The thing is, the cross-site scripting might still happen because your website might be in the same network as the other websites, but it is least the word in English least keen to happen, I would say, or least possible that it will happen, because there are some sort of physical limits in the middle, or some more limits or isolation that you would have in a shared hosting. But still, it's not the same concern as if you were in a shared hosting, but it's still a concern.
Okay, good to know. Good to know. And then malware. I mean, the best way I describe that, it's sort of like if you just think about your computer when maybe you get an email with an attachment and someone hid some sort of, I don't know, script in there, or some sort of little tiny bit of code that creates havoc on your system. Or we see a lot of malware in our browsing environments and on websites, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it comes in all different flavors, but basically, someone's taken some time to create, like with a lot of these things, to create a little piece of something that's going to go in and cause nuisance, oftentimes just nuisance type problems, but problems that you absolutely don't want on your website.
Exactly. For example, you can inject malware in a website because this website has a plugin that sends emails through the online form that most websites have, the contact form. So what you're trying to do is take control of such plugin and such email sending mechanism, because you're going to use it to send spam. And then spam, when it's detected by the anti-spam servers and antivirus, it's not going to point to the bad guy, doing the thing. It's just going to point to Robonzo's website, right? And then they're going to blame you. Let's say, if we would say it like that, right? Just to keep it simple. And the other thing that malware does a lot is it tries to take control of the hardware, which is behind the scenes of your website, because they, bad guys might use it to do cryptocurrency mining and all of those things that require heavy hardware resources, and they're just trying to use everyone's computer or server for free. That's mainly what it is. In some very, very sparse cases, malware is used to try and pull credit card information and contact information, which for most websites, especially built on WordPress, is not stored in the same place where the WordPress site is, because most of us, we just use like third-party e-commerce solutions, and those guys keep all their data on their sites. So in a real day-by-day risk for a WordPress website, malware is mostly to try and control your email sending capabilities and try to hijack your provider's servers on the background, just to try and abuse them. Mostly, the thing is that it makes you look bad, right? It brings your website down. The antivirus bangs every time someone comes in, and then people lose kind of respect and credibility and trust, I would say, with your brand, which is the worst part of it.
Yeah, and then depending on the nature of the extent of the infection, if I can call it that, sometimes your host is going to send you a message that says, "Hey, you need to fix this, or we're going to shut your website down."
Yes, and sometimes, and it's for the good when it happens. Sometimes the hosting company might just suspend your website temporarily, which is better. Because a suspended website will not infect people. It will just look like it's down. And then, you can always say, we had a technical problem. The problem is when the host doesn't act that fast, and then it stays on for a few days, and then you have the pressure of the host and your clients, and that's when you call the experts, right? Yeah. But well, we don't want to scare people, right? There are easy ways to mitigate it, but yeah, it might happen. It's very possible. We see it on a daily basis.
Right. Okay, so stolen passwords, or one of the first things I did when I was putting this presentation together was I tried to get some I want to say community peers to weigh in on what are some common oversights when it comes to WordPress website security. And one of them was, I actually really like the way this guy said it. He said using terrible passwords, or on top of that, keeping old developers or user accounts active. Like, for instance, you had somebody working on your website, and he says, you'd like to think everyone is chill. They are not. So that was from a freelance web designer. But so some of the things that happen with stolen passwords, I know there's probably a much longer list, but common ones are they will work on trying to get into your WordPress admin area, so that they can just get into the site and wreak havoc. Get into FTP accounts, which is another way for them to wreak havoc on kind of the back end, if you don't know what FTP is, but it's a way of transferring files and pretty much seeing all the files on your website, and maybe things that aren't even exactly part of the website. Also hacking into the database of your website, getting into your hosting account, which could be terrible. What are they going to do? You basically have your credit card there at your hosting account, and what are they going to do? Yeah, maybe just start spending your money or whatever.
Yeah.
Maybe canceling things, who knows? And then this one was kind of interesting to me, custom email addresses. And what I assumed they meant by this is, so for instance, if I, on my Robonzo.com, my music artist website, so I have an email address, roberto@robonzo.com. So we're talking about things like that, where I might use something like Google's G Suite, or maybe I'm using my host's email service, but I've got these customized email addresses, and they might want to get in there and exploit those. Is that what that refers to?
Yeah, and also the fact that when you have a customized email account and you use it as a password, there's a big chance, because most people have a single password and they use it for every website, every service. If you have a custom email, let's say roberto@robonzo.com, then very much likely that's the same email you use for Netflix or for Facebook. And then if your Netflix password is exposed, because some guys have nothing to do with their lives but try and hack Netflix, right? So they
It's
come
happened
up
to
with
me.
yeah, so they come up with your password, then everywhere where you have that email, it's likely that you're going to have the same password, right?
Yep. Yep.
So having a custom email instead of a user is a way to pair things up. Like if you don't have a user, I mostly use emails. That's a good practice. But the thing is, you put your email in there, you're already giving them half the information, right? Like, this guy is using it somewhere else, so I might try and hack somewhere else when he's using his email, and then I'm just going to get his password. Or maybe they just got it from a list, those that get published on Twitter all the time, where your email is. And if you have the same password, well, it's pretty easy to just come into your WordPress site. They just follow the domain robunso.com, and there's a website in there. There might be, and then they have the password, so it's just make it easier for them.
Yep. If I was a hacker, I do that. I do that a lot because I want to know. Oh, they like someone might send me an email, and I can see they have a domain of their own, but they didn't put a website in their signature line, so I will go copy the domain of their email just to go see what it is.
Exactly.
I wish I was as skilled as a lot of what we call hackers now. Just not to do malicious things, but I know that there's a lot of skill involved in that can actually be used for good things. But so, and just a quick comment for those of you that are listening to this and already like, yeah, man, this is way too technical. If it is, the presentation, which I'll make available with a link in the show notes for this episode, includes links to articles that I use to get this information. And these are from sources that are regularly updated, so they stay on top of stuff. So if you want to actually learn more, or you're listening to us and go, I wish they would have said more about that, then that's a way for you to do it. So now then, hosting. This ought to be your favorite area. So the things that I listed on hosting. So we talked a little bit about shared hosting plans, and then in my presentation I also mentioned managed WordPress hosting. Do you want to say anything on either one of those two areas?
Well, I think we already explained a little bit of the difference, but in a shared hosting service, mostly you share a server with a lot of people, just like if you were sharing a hotel room or a little apartment, right? So instead of having all the cost on your back, well, you're just splitting the cost among a lot of tenants. So these services tend to be cheaper, which is good as a starting point. The thing is, you need to manage your WordPress site in full. So you depend a lot on your own technical skills and the tools you happen to gather or find out about. And on a managed WordPress service, you have experts that are taking care of all the backend of your WordPress site. So you mostly only have to worry about your design and your content. This tends to be a little bit more expensive than shared hosting, but if you're at that point that you're making a decision to start a business and using WordPress, I would say if you're serious about business and you have a little bit of resources, which is not that much, go with a managed service, because in the end, it would allow you to focus on your business. And then most of the security problems and issues are going to be mitigated by the platform administrator. You would still have some responsibility with your users and passwords and other things, but the managed service it's mostly like a catered service. So you don't have to worry about, doing dishwashing and tablecloth and all the plates and everything. You just go and eat, basically. It's pretty much the same. You just host and eat your website and consume it with your clients and do your business. Focus on your business. The difference in the pricing is worth it, unless you have some skills or you hire someone like Roberto to handle it for you.
It's good advice. And even, I think you alluded to this, but if you're a consultant that's, trying to get a legitimate business going, that even you using or recommending managed WordPress hosting has value, because then instead of focusing on doing updates or making sure things are working for all your clients, someone is helping you, taking much of the load for you on that.
Exactly.
I think, my favorite one in here, which may be one of yours too, is to choose your hosting provider wisely.
Yes.
I hear sometimes, not a lot, I think like in the United States, sadly, GoDaddy's a great service. was about to say, sadly, most people go to GoDaddy, but it's because they are a reputable service, and it's because they advertise a lot, and they have great brand recognition. And if you're with GoDaddy, don't let my comment about sadly most people go with GoDaddy. When I say that, it's only because, and it's mostly just carryover from when they first started. When they first started out, I really did not like the way they modeled the part where you go in there and manage an account either for yourself or someone else. But it's getting better. That is even getting better and better all the time. But there are a lot of great hosting companies out there, and domain places where you can register domains, places where you can get security certificates and various other things related to your website. So don't always look for the cheapest price, I guess, is a good kind of rule of thumb.
If I may have a saying in here,
Please.
I don't know if you mind.
Please.
But we do hosting. So, out of being ethical and serious, and because that's the way we are, we don't say bad things about other providers. But this is what I would say would be my advice. Not every hosting company services you the same way. So try to have like an honest introspection of what you really know and don't know about what your skills are, and then try and find a host that would have that level of service that would match your level of skills. For example, if you're a skilled web consultant or web designer, or you're just a hobbyist but with a lot of knowledge, then you can buy a good service that you don't really mind because it's cheap. If you're gonna have like next hour support, or like a super staff on the back that is just answering your questions right away, because you know what you're doing, right? But if your argument is, I'm starting a business, this is my first website, let's find a cheap hosting service. Most likely their support service is not going to be that fast or that involved. They're going to send you to forums to read on their help documents, which is not wrong because you're paying little money for the service. So I would say, if you want to match a service that gives you the quality of service that you're expecting, price is not really a criteria. Just go and try their support service. There's always a service chat before you buy. So try and chat with the guys, see how helpful they are, how willing they are to answer your questions, and see if you really need their help that much, and then go from there. For example, GoDaddy is a perfect place to start. And I have a hosting company. I shouldn't be saying GoDaddy is perfect, but they are. Right? They're cheap and they're good and they're fast to start. If your website goes past a certain level of usage, then not so much. Then there are other companies, I don't want to promote them for free in your podcast, but there are other companies that are awesome if you're pretty technical. For example, we try to keep a non-technical approach, and a lot of our clients are small businesses that need a little bit of hand-holding. Mm-hmm. People that need to be guided and advised, and sometimes even helped to get plugins installed and things like that. Even if it's a shared service, we do a little bit of hand-holding because that's the market that we selected. And we do have a lot of super technical clients that just pay the bill and never show up, right? Mm-hmm. Never ask for support or anything. So I would say, if you want to save yourself from frustration, you just try to recognize how skilled you are. And sometimes the more expensive the service is, like those managed services, those are better match for you, because those are going to keep all the trouble on their side, and you just run your business and run your website and be happy all day.
Yep. And I have some technical skills, but I'm not a developer. I'm more of a designer. Do I have some developer skills? Sure, but I wouldn't call myself a developer. But I'll tell you, I like being able to get on chat with a host and have them help me resolve a problem for the time that it saves me.
Of course.
And I love learning about this stuff, but I know like sometimes I'm just not up for spending 10, 15, 20, 30 minutes on researching a problem when I know that they can help me while I'm working on something else at the same time. So that's another upside. So yeah, thanks for sharing that. That's good.
Exactly. Just dedicate yourself to running your business. You don't necessarily need to run the website that deep. If you have, close support or a good consultant that is going to do support for you.
Exactly. Okay, so some security things we can do to, well, on top of choosing the right host and the right type of hosting service, some other things we can do are make sure that we have a good backup solution in place, or that your consultant or your service provider is providing a level of backup that you need. That if you're, designing your site, or you had someone design for you that maybe you think could be a little bit of a newbie, to make sure that they have appropriate security tools or in the WordPress world we call plugins for helping to safeguard you or mitigate. We keep using that word mitigate, which is a good one to use here, but I'd like to help safeguard your website. And then also now something that's really become a requirement to move your site to an SSL or HTTPS environment, which gives you a security certificate. In the old days, or in not too long ago, these were used for e-commerce transactions and certain types of websites, and many websites didn't have it. But now I know that Google is even kind of downranking your site for not having it, and it's kind of just become a requirement, right?
Yes, and most hosts already offer it for free. So the certificate is included. It is pretty much a basic thing in these days, but sometimes people forget that the certificate itself is not the certificate is not going to install itself. You just start your website and you don't realize it's not there until it shows the unsecure or not secure website banner on your client screen, and that scares them, like, oh, this website is not safe. So I think it's important that if you don't have the knowledge on how to do it, just go through your host. They will install it for you and make sure it works, or just your consultant. But it's pretty basic, especially not really for security, but for matters of reputation.
Yeah, it's good.
Because going into the website and seeing, not secure, people are scared with all the news and all the things. So you don't want that there. And it's pretty easy to handle.
Right. And I guess it's worth saying that these certificates don't automatically renew themselves, even though, depending, they may be automatically renewing for you because someone is taking care of that for you, your host or your consultant, but they can expire. So just be aware of that and make sure that they're being attended to.
Yes.
Okay, so let's see here. There's kind of a long list that follows, but there are many things that can be done to help protect your password on the WordPress site itself. Google offers and separate from that, Google offers a great service called reCAPTCHA, which is a great way to keep some of the malicious, I guess, bots from off your website. And then there's a short list of technical stuff here, unless there's something that you're really passionate about. I'm not even going to mention, but it's going to be in the checklist for those of you that are interested in learning a little bit more. It'll be available for you.
I wanted to mention one thing that we left behind really quick, which is a common practice, and it's very important. You mentioned removing other users' accounts from your website. It is pretty common in WordPress that when you have someone create your website, you give them a user and a password, and you give it to someone else who's going to have a look on the text, or all of the
content.
How would you say content, the copywriting and the content, and then you might just give it to a friend who's going to come in and check out the security, and then you're going to call Robonzo. He's going to go in and do some other things, and then at some point you have 10 users in your website that are no longer 10 user accounts that are not being used. It's like having people have a copy of the keys to your house and not live there anymore, or not come very often. They might just lose it, and someone might come in. So trying to do some cleaning up of that, and the same with plugins and themes. If you're not using it on your WordPress, just on your website, just clean it up, just scrub it out, because all of those things become little security hazards, little possible. In security terms, we call it enhances the surface of attack, which means there are more points that can be vulnerable. That's a word in English?
Vulnerable, right?
Vulnerable.
Yeah.
That's the word. More points that can be vulnerable, and where you can be attacked through. So cleaning up the old users and changing your password on a certain cycle, like on a periodic way, like every 3 months or every 6 months, you go and change your password. Just add another number, just change it from 1 to 2 and then from 2 to 1. Just change it, just to make sure you keep your user accounts clean, and your own account well maintained. That's all.
Yeah, and I know a lot of people really hate this whole password thing, but to me, if you're listening, it's never been easier to manage your passwords with some of the tools that Google Chrome, Firefox, Safari, all the browsers have available to us. And then there are also other apps you can use that you don't even have to remember them anymore. You just have to kind of remember how to go copy paste it without even looking at it in some cases. And in many cases, it'll be automatically filled out for you. You just have to make sure your device is password protected or secure, and then you're good usually.
Yeah, and my 2 cents about passwords would be, it's actually safer if you use a password like, for example, dog, automobile, rocket, and then you put a dot in the end, and you put a couple capital letters in there, but just dog, automobile, rocket, and a dot is going to give you more security, and it's a much more complex password to be broken by a computer program that if you put like AW1 and asterisk and all of those things that you're never going to remember. So if you put together three random words that you can remember because you have them in front of you in your office, like a fan, a desk, and I don't know, on the ceiling, you just put fan, desk, ceiling, and a dot. That's a great password. Couple of capital letters in there, let's say the first of every word. That's a great password, and it's going to give you more entropy, which is how we call it in the computer security world, which is just complexity, right? It's just going to protect you better than a crazy password that you can never remember. So you don't really need to have these crazy passwords.
Well, I'm a fan of that, but it's so funny. I've heard different arguments about it. So after our conversation today, in the coming days or weeks, I would love to talk more about that. And I would love to actually ask some other people too, just to see what people think, like air quotes security people, people that know, just to see what they say, because I've heard two different things.
The good thing is that if you Google password entropy tool, or you just put password entropy checker, it would give you 5 or 6 online tools that you could use to check and actually score your password entropy or complexity, which means how hard it is for a computer to break it, not a human being, but a computer to break it. You'll be surprised what the results you get when you use random words combined with let's say one number and one symbol, which are pretty easy to remember, like one and a dollar sign, like $1, which is pretty easy to remember. You'll be surprised the scores you get. So it actually doesn't go that much into opinions. It's just a matter of going into the tool and letting it help you calculate. But yeah, it's a pretty intense debate with security.
That's cool.
People.
I thanks for the tip. I knew that today, no matter what what you were trying to tell me the first time I asked you to do this, you said, "Well, I'm not really a security expert, blah blah blah," but I knew I was going to learn something. so thanks. And so let me end with the quote that is at the end of my presentation I actually did, and that was from Ryan Holiday, who has written many great books, but this one comes from the Daily Stoic 366 Meditations of Wisdom, Perseverance, and the Art of Living. And the quote is, "Remember, even what we get for free has a cost, if only in what you pay to store it in our garages and in our minds." I thought that was pretty good.
Absolutely. Downloading, especially for us who are people from the computer world, I tend to do a process I call download, which is downloading stuff from my mind. I just write it down and put it into documents or something, because we keep so many pieces of information in our brains these days, like phone numbers and passwords and users for all these tools and websites. And like you said, there are pretty nice apps like 1Password and LastPass and a couple others that we can just start putting the responsibility of remembering all those things on those apps and taking that away from our day-to-day lives. We don't need that anymore.
I love it. So do you want to take a couple of minutes to talk about the hosting service that you are part of, and I'm correct in saying that it's based in Panama here in Central America, right?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. For anyone who's listening that can use something like that.
I appreciate the opportunity, Roberto. So we don't have our servers based in Panama because Panama is not such a great place to have servers. Just to start with that, we have our servers abroad in Europe and in the States, right? But what we do is we do have a client base here in Panama and Latin America, and there is a reason why our service is in Spanish, servidores rápidos. You can see there is not an English page. It's because most of the local clients and people from Latin America had to go to the States to buy their hosting services, and then we were trying to bring a service to them that was going to feel closer, more kind of, I don't want to say intimate, but I don't know the word in English, just closer, more like, like the next door guy hosting service. And what we do is we focus, like I said, on small businesses, mostly startups or people who have like small shops, not necessarily in the technical world. We have hotels, we have shoe stores, doctors, and pretty much everyone who wants to have a website. We do have a couple corporate clients who have selected us because we do come with a vast experience in the corporate world about websites and stuff. We still do cloud services on AWS and other complex things as part of another business activity we have, but we wanted to bring this service that was close, that was I would say near to the clients, and we mostly specialize in WordPress because WordPress is in our minds and in our way of things is it's just the easiest way to get online. If you have an idea to communicate, like if you're a writer, if you're a musician, if you are a small business owner, if you're a big company, whatever you're trying to say to your clients or to put out there for people to read, WordPress is the right tool. And now that WordPress has like a great e-commerce platform, which is WooCommerce, and it's integrated with everything, we are also helping a lot of clients with their online e-commerce, I would say, adventures or endeavors.
Yeah, good word.
Because now that the pandemic came in and COVID is kind of killing businesses, a new breed of businesses has raised, which is online selling and online delivery, and everything is online. So we are pretty much devoted to that market. The small and mid-sized business market is the market where we serve. We're happy to advise. We have a lot of clients that come to us just to get advice, and we don't charge for that. If you host with us, we're super happy. If you don't, and you get something out of talking to us or listening to our video conferences and webinars that we give every now and then, we participate with the WordPress community in Panama a lot, with the Panama City group.
Yes.
And now with you
and with mine.
Your group. Yeah, now with you and your group, which is also great. The Las Lajas group is great. It's just different flavor of the same sauce, which is awesome. And we try to keep, to be very near. We're very technical people. We just try to keep the conversation not technical, in Spanish, with a very hand-holding, I would say, support. And that's what we do. And we try to keep the prices low because that's the market we serve. And now, if you have a big project and you want to talk WordPress the big way, we're also ready for that. We just don't promote it in our website yet.
Cool.
We have another brand. We have another brand for that, just not to scare people with the technical talk.
Well, I suspected as much that you did, so it's really good to know because you're a neighbor. So very good to know. Well, thanks again for coming on to talk on the Morning Tempo podcast. This is going to be great for some of the people that I serve, and it's just good content, I think, to put out there to help people out.
Thank you very much for having me. It's been a pleasure. It's the first time I'm in a podcast. I've been to webinars and stuff like that. Never a podcast. That's pretty cool.
Well, I predict a growing guest appearances in podcasts. I've launched many podcast guest careers here.
Oh wow, that's nice.
Yeah. Well, now you're going to be more interested in it. You're going to start asking around, and so yeah, it's great. You did a good job, by the way.
Thank you. I was a bit nervous about it.
Wow, I thought this was a great conversation. I hope that you got something from it yourself. At the top of the episode, I promised to tell you how to get a website security checklist for free. Like I said, you can use this checklist to have a chat with your web administrator or IT administrator, or perhaps with the person or company you're thinking of hiring to build your next website. To get your security checklist for free, just go to morningtempo.com/secure. This episode was powered by ConvertKit. More than just an email marketing company, ConvertKit is focused on landing pages too, giving beginner creators everything they need to start building an email list. I've been using ConvertKit since early 2016. Their new free plan allows creators to make unlimited landing pages and forms. You can choose from multiple templates, add personalization, add design, include an incentive email, create a thank you page, manage subscribers, and send broadcast emails. The support and educational resources at ConvertKit are top-notch, and that is important to me. It should be to you. To learn how ConvertKit can help you connect with your audience so that you can make a living doing the work that you love, go to morningtempo.com/convert or the show notes for this episode. Thanks again for listening. This podcast is made possible by the support of listeners like you. To learn about the different ways that you can support the podcast, visit morningtempo.com/crowdsponsor. There you can also join the Morning Tempo email list for insiders who want to know what I'm learning from the business owners and entrepreneurs that I speak with and work with, including those you hear on this podcast. Morning Tempo insiders get an occasional email from me with business insights, recommendations, hacks, and anything else I come across that could help you in your creative entrepreneurial journey. And it's free, and you can unsubscribe at any time. If you enjoyed today's episode, please subscribe wherever you listen to your favorites. With a whole lot of love to my good friend and former bandmate Frank Salazar, who wrote and performed the Morning Tempo podcast theme song. Frank, you rock. Ciao for now.